longer than we realized to finish each feature. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we're not.
Yeah, we can start. I know not everyone's gonna probably join. I know a few folks asked for a recording, but I can share my screen. I think we can get started because we also prepped a lot of content for today. Okay. And Min, you have the recording and everything set up? Okay, awesome. Okay. So we changed the schedule a little bit for today, but we will still start with just giving everyone a quick shout out on and the cohort. This is actually our like bonus all hands, but we'll still have fun and cover some like meaningful content. We'll also want to go over some educational content from some of the questions that people have been asking in office hours and through direct messages this week and last week. So we'll put everyone some personas, cover the cases. I think, Min, we're moving the Kahoot and Grace's part. So Grace prepared a little networking tip and worksheet for everyone. But since she can't join, she actually recorded her session. So we might move it at the very end. So that way you can stay to watch the recording or rewatch it at your own time. And again, a few folks asked about, I know from like live streams and things. So I'm going to pause here on this page here. So if you want to check out more on like the cohort content and stuff, or like if you want to share the cohort within your friends, you can use this, or you can just send them to the pages that you signed up with. We're inviting a few folks into alumni status. So you'll probably get an email from Min or from another alumni next week. Know what that means, but you, as an alumni, you would basically be joining us into helping us interview and select future cohort students. So some of you probably remember some of the other amazing alumni that interviewed you. So that's if you're a top performer that your coach identified, we will probably be reaching out to you within the next few weeks. And then this sort of wrap up is just a huge celebration to all of you for all your teams. It's really awesome seeing all the work that has been put together. And it's really nice to sort of as a team and coach reflect across what each and every one of you built across all these product spaces, from gaming to avatars, of course, a lot of AI stuff, B2B, consumer, right? And across all these really awesome incubators like YC, A16Z, and more. So really excited. And I know a lot of you all got to work with really technical founders mostly. So it's also really nice to hear all these stories from all of you, whether like pleasant or like these awesome behavioral questions like pivoting, getting pushbacks from engineer, working with a bunch of engineers, the engineers shipping really fast. So it's awesome, really nice to hear all of that. And another thing that Min really helped quickly for us to put together is some of the shout outs to the CoPass beta. So this is something in the next few months we're gonna completely improve / slightly revamp for the next cohorts. But it's really nice to see how everyone got to use them. and some of the folks are very, very consistent. So a huge shout out to everyone on this leaderboard here. I think all 5 of you have consistently been on top of the leaderboard, completing every activity. So we'll definitely chat more with all of you to see like, hey, what were some things you all enjoyed, and how we can like revamp the co-pass system for future cohorts. Some ideas I'm already working on with Jenny. So Jenny's from Talofa Games. I think some of her team members have like really awesome suggestions too. Is we're going to try to make all the onboarding experience like more through co-pass as well. So a lot of what you're getting on Slack and Google Docs and different files, we're going to try to make it like more documented in one place. So the sort of, if all of you remember, like the portal flow towards co-pass, like when you interview to join the cohorts, towards when you actually get accepted, how to prep, how to start, which team you're on, what your preferences are. We'll try to link all that experience a little bit more together. And then a quick shout out there is a lot of you have voted on the merch that you want. So for these top 5 folks on leaderboards, even if you're not based in SF, Alex, I know you're based in Canada, so you might be a slight edge case, but for everyone else that's based anywhere in the US, once we have all our merch ready, we will be sending all of you special gifts as sort of the winners of the leaderboards there. So definitely, if we're reaching out to you for addresses and things, make sure you give us one that's like, you'll be there a few months out. And once we have the merch, that's something we'll work with Min to send out to you guys. And if you're coming to Demo Day, which I know is now, I think Grace moved the date to Tech Week. You can also let us know, like if you prefer to just pick it up then. That's also, of course, an option. And for anyone else who, of course, isn't on this list, there's still going to be a lot of amazing merch that you can pick up as part of the cohort when you attend Demo Day as well. But for the top 5, we definitely have a very special gift prepared. And then finally, the last part we want to emphasize for CoPass is from all the PPP inputs and data, whether it's screenshots and all the information collected, I will share examples of how past cohorts, like before the CoPass existed, how they kind of did things manually and put things together. In the following weeks, for a lot of folks who are at this application/portfolio stage, there's going to be something quite meaningful that you can use the sort of data from the CoPass that will work to send out to each team to put together on Figma. We had some internal discussions on this from the coaches. We think it'd still be really valuable to all of you to essentially lay it out similar to what we have in this template before onto CoPass, and then we will sort of help build out essentially a site for all of you guys. It will be a one-pager. We'll put it on our Demo Day websites. We'll put it officially so people can see your work that is credited, but also make the link something that you can basically embed in your own project, or if you haven't started on a portfolio yet, if anyone wants to see a sample of your work, essentially we will help build out that portfolio page with you together with CoPass. So that's something we're working on together probably in the next few weeks. This was something in the past sort of like a little bit difficult for each team to build because it ends up taking a lot of time to regather all the week by week work. So hopefully with CoPass, everything in place, it'll be a lot faster. And then we'll still encourage every team to make a Figma copy of it so you can use it for your deck and other things. So that wraps up some of the logistics and housekeeping items. I want to give a huge shout out to all the coaches and program leaders, and we'll go by all the coaches again one by one. And I really want to give Min a huge shout out to you for helping host and organize so many like co-working sessions, in-person kind of fun, potluck, and all these activities. So Min has been a great alumni, and I know a lot of you probably meet Manvi as well, who was an alumni who supported us, who actually interviewed Min before. So there's a lot of this idea of like passing down the torch. And even though you might feel like you're very new to the program or you're new to the design world, we always emphasize like there's different levels and spectrums of mentorship and community work. If you're sort of into these things, and especially if you're based in San Francisco, definitely work more with Min. There's a lot of these opportunities that will continue to happen for each cohort, even as the cohort wraps up. So hopefully there's a lot of connections and enjoyment you can have with your coach or your team. And then finally, just going over shout outs for all the coaches again really quickly. Huge shout out for Amy. Amy's team, I think, has done extremely amazing work, and their team worked probably the most in depth with most engineers. So her work and her experience from Microsoft, I think, really helped build and iterate and pivot really fast in this high demanding environment. And then, of course, Johnny on their YC Islands team. I've seen a lot of amazing work here, from like working in offices together towards you guys, like building, shipping, essentially like using like these meta-driven workflows and sprints. So I think what Johnny was teaching all of you from Meta and Google, these sprint working styles, has been really embedded in how all of you work. So it's really awesome to see how industry-driven you guys have become. And of course, Jenny's team, I think, was probably the most, Jenny and Victoria, I think both your teams are probably some of the most well-organized and documented. I know Jenny meticulously plans and documents every work and every week. So it's really awesome to see on Slack, like every day, how she sends the message and plans everything. So I think like being so structured is definitely amazing, but hopefully all of you on her team still got to feel a little bit of like what really designing in industry is like, right? Solving these ambiguous problems, filling in the gaps. As all of you move into these real industry roles, you'll probably feel like there's a lot less structure than what we provide. There's a lot less clarity than what we provide. So hopefully if you're on a team that had a bit more problem defining, where you had to do a little bit more PM work, that's great. But I know just from a product perspective, it also feels nice for a coach to map all that out for you. And for Hannah and Jackie's team, again, I think both of these are really amazing. I know all of you got to work with Jing from Deep Vista. I know he's a super amazing technical founder from Google DeepMind. So again, like really awesome work here. And then Kathy's team, I know went through probably one of the largest pivot that we talked about in office hours. Kathy does a lot of amazing AI work, so it's really nice to see how all of you have like learned from her and adapted her workflows and how all of you build. I know Kathy's team is super experienced and technical, so it's really nice to see the hands-on storytelling and presentation work that we showed last week. And then finally, Namita's team. So I got to work with this team a little bit on the first week. Namita ended up doing most of the heavy lifting. I think this team's work is honestly one of the most exciting too, because of the avatar aspects. I think the team did a really wonderful prototype and showcase last week. So I'm really excited to see how this team can work with Namita to translate and finalize the projects into portfolios and sort of other media to showcase the work because of the avatar nature for my work. I think that wraps up shouting out all the coaches and teams. And again, just a huge shout out to everyone and give yourselves a huge shout out to you. We went through this really fast because there's a little bit more content I want to cover. So hopefully there's no questions so far. The part I want to really quickly breathe by is just based off of your state right now as you're ending the cohort officially, what you can do right now, right? So 70% of you are probably just at this state where like, okay, we focused really hard on getting this industry experience and really focusing on just shipping the spec to the founder, to the engineers, to the product owner. But the part I want to remind all of you, and we kept talking about this in the last 3 weeks, right? If you think back to every all hands on workshop, is like, yes, it's very important for all of you to learn this skill set of working like with engineers, working with founders, shipping with constraints, getting pushback, and essentially working in a real environment, right? That's very cool and all, but the whole point of the Cohort project isn't for you to like hand off the spec, right? Handing off the spec is just part of your learning. The actual goal that you should have is how you can apply everything you built into your own job hunting, right? Like our goal, we're a job hunting oriented cohort. So what that means is based off of the current stage that you're at, you should really look at where you're at in your career, whether that's like academically, maybe some of you are in school, maybe some of you are career switchers, maybe some of you are mid-level designers, and you want to take some of the advice that I'm going to give you based off of your current state, set a goal and then continue working towards that goal with the momentum of your cohort. Because what's going to happen is like during the 10 weeks, all of you, like we push all of you to do the most amazing work possible. I think all of you like learned probably like 5 to 10 hours at least of like synchronous building together, learning classes from your coaches, workshops, etc. And probably spent at least another 10 hours hands-on. Some of you might have even spent like 30, 40 hours building out this project, right? So once the cohort ends, a lot of you are going to feel a little bit of that withdrawal symptom, like, oh, wow, like, I feel like I just did a massive achievement, but what should I go from there, right? So that huge gap is what we want to avoid, so that even though you're not being pushed by your coach or in this team week to week, you can carry that momentum that you built throughout the 10 weeks to stay productive, right? So here are a few things I want to highlight. Depending on where you're at, I'll give a few examples of possible goals you might have. So the first thing, I think I talked to Valerie, some other folks. I think there's a few people I chatted with very recently about how many case studies you need to have prepared if you're a career switcher or a student, or maybe you're like, this is like your first kind of experience with UX. Then I would say you're actually in a very great place, right? Because you've essentially already know what industry is like. So whether you're working on a school project next or you're working on something else, you will have a better way to frame your project in this industry standard. A lot of you are probably at this application stage. So I will really recommend all of you stay to watch Grace's recording on like how to network, right? One of the most important things to network is like, what do you show them, right? Because after you introduce the person, you can be the most charismatic person in the room. Even if the person's remotely interested in working with you, guess what, right? They're going to ask you for a work sample. And it's going to be too lazy if you just sent over like the like actual MVP or the link to your product, right? Because it's going to be very unclear. What did you work on? How did you work on this? How did you think about the project? So essentially, your best piece of material should be your portfolio link, right? If you're at this application stage. Again, if you're still very new to UX, you're still building out your work experience and like building out your case studies, then I would say these are two different stages and your goals are obviously going to be a little bit different. So the third stage, I will say, some of you recently messaged me about this as well. There's a lot of interviews going on right now. I will say, lucky for all of you, the design industry is probably, in all the tech world, one of the least negatively impacted industries by AI, right? Especially with startups, all of you will probably start to see this trend where more and more design-driven roles open up. And in the near future, you'll probably see these emerging roles where designers and engineers blend more and more, right? Some of you might still feel really uncomfortable with like building with AI. We're going to give all of you more resources. I know Kathy taught this a little bit, but we're going to give you all more resources on attending like hackathons, like the one Kathy's doing with OpenAI, the ones Kathy shared where, like you're building a quick project with some of our companies within our network, like Manus or Bolt, right? So there's going to be a lot of these opportunities to get more technical, but there are definitely a lot of existing opportunities for just being a purely designer who's very fluent and familiar with AI products. So all of you have worked on some AI-related product by now through the cohort. So all of you should be extremely comfortable in interviewing for these roles. So if you're already landing interviews, then what's going to matter the most is take some of these storytelling decks you presented last week, refine it, distill it for your interviews. So we'll talk about some of these outcomes in examples. So the first one is like, if you're in the state where you're focusing on like getting enough case studies, I want to give you a clear metric and a clear goal to think about. And that goal is to make the most attractive resume. So how do you define this? Imagine if you have a resume that you sent over. You'll know it's good when anyone who looks at this resume, they are interested in clicking on your portfolio link. Okay, so if you have a resume, the resume isn't good enough, then guess what? People aren't even going to visit your portfolio. So if you think back to these goals and levels, this matters because if you're now spending too much time on your portfolio, but you really don't have the work experience or the attractive resume to boost it up, you could have the best portfolio slide and the chances are very few people would look at it. you could still totally land a job with that. We've had cohort alumni that you all can chat with that like didn't even have a resume. They landed a job at a startup because their portfolio work that they did with the cohort was like really, really good. They had a few projects, I believe they did back in the day, whether freelance or for fun at Ukraine. They were very like good visually driven pieces. And then they networked, right? They met someone, they sent them the sample. The person's like, oh, this work is really cool. This seems very related to what we do. Let's just interview you. That could work in a startup world, but in reality, any role, especially if you're looking at contractors or looking at roles where you're just applying online, the resume is the main bar to hit, right? And nowadays, I will say, you see these hirings happening more in verticals and niches, right? All of you now have this advantage of having an AI portfolio project under your belt, right? But you'll still see these vertical and niches that really matter because the words and the metrics and things like that that people used to talk about in the resume all the time really matter less and less because anyone can use ChatGPT or any AI tool to rewrite the resume, right? So the keywords, the ADS scanning, like that's very basic stuff. What really matters is like you want to highlight your project on your resume in a strong enough way that matches these roles that you're looking for. So I want all of you, whatever state you're at, to really think about your resume on this first level. Use it as this bar to evaluate yourself. You should see a role, early career contract role. If some of you are more advanced, like mid-level roles or big tech roles, you see this job description, you see the posting, you should already have a good idea where I feel like I can get an interview or not. Right? If you feel like you have no idea if I apply, would I get an interview or not, you probably don't understand your resume good enough. And another segment I want to dive a little bit more deeper in is like the personas that all of you are in. Probably 20-30% of you are undergrad or master's students. I know some of you are in like very good places because you're like freshmen. So like in that case, you are probably in the best fit to find a big tech internship if you already have the cohort project under your belt. You're golden. But if you're sophomore, junior, I will say that's also the goal you should aim for. Most of our alumni that get big tech internship end up getting converted into big tech. So that's like the best track to get like a 180K job if you're based in SF, like right off the bat, graduated, right? Of course, it's going to be really competitive. So if you only have this one project right now, you need to really think about during your program, whether you're taking a more traditional design school or a more technical background, you should think about what additional project you're going to prepare and how you're going to highlight it on your resume. So that's aiming for internships. The other segment, if you're career switcher focused, I will say right off your cohort project, you're in the best place to find that next opportunity because you're fresh off of one experience. So make sure you beef up your resume with the cohort experience, right? And then make sure that you're applying like rapid fire. Again, in this bucket, you probably will lean a little bit more towards like needing to complete your portfolio as well, because usually the best roles that fit you are contract roles or freelancers, because they usually look for people that have graduated longer. So that, again, is your main goal. Again, there's some like visa situations and details, right? Not all of you are based in the US. So every case will vary slightly. And then finally, we had a few questions about like wanting more like cohort type experiences. And like we got a lot of these questions about like doing the cohort again. So in some of these discussions, I did mention like there have been past cohort members like Peggy who have had a lot of success with this. But I really emphasize all of you before you just want to like sign up and join another cohort project to be your second case study. Try to look for opportunities and experiences first, whether that's in your school or apply to some roles. So even in Peggy's example, like she did 2 projects with us, Navid and then Tempo, but in between, she still looked for additional opportunities. So having those 3 case studies ended up helping her get a role at Google as an interaction designer. So even though she might have used majorly the case studies at the cohorts as her main presentation, you should still try to, instead of going cohort back to back to back, really just try to look for other projects and package it on your resume and use what you learned in the cohort, right? The cohort at the end of the day isn't just the work experience, right? It's also what you learn. So you should really try to apply that, especially all the frameworks and the storytelling it can be reused. Okay. If there's any questions, please type it in the chat. I'll check after the share out. So now we move more into this portfolio focus stage. This is probably the hardest bucket because for folks in this bucket, a lot of times, maybe 2 out of 20 end up doing another cohort, or they're back in school and their momentum keeps, right? Or maybe they're just looking for another freelance or contract role, right? But in this bucket, it's actually very important to keep your momentum because I will say it's the easiest to lose momentum. In this bucket, you end up in this space where you have this huge disconnect where suddenly the cohort's over and no one's pushing you to deliver work. You don't have a UX manager anymore. You don't have a mentor checking in with you every week. So you might end up saying well, my cohort project's done, right? I have a deck, I have a story. It shouldn't be that hard to put on my portfolio. But a lot of folks, we've seen this where they were really good performers in the cohort, but then they end up spending the next 3 to 6 months with very little momentum actually building in the portfolio, right? So if you feel like that's going to be you, then I want to flag that risk for you early, because at the end of the day, it's impossible for all your coaches to check in with all of you individually long-term after the cohort ends, right? So it's really up to you to keep that momentum week to week and not feel like, okay, I finished the cohort, so I don't really know what I should do next, right? And there are ways we've thought about better supporting all of you post-cohort transition because of that withdrawal phase we mentioned. A few things I want to emphasize here is we'll share this template. So this is going to be a link. This, again, was what I mentioned at Copass. I think this is a very good place to start. A lot of times people kind of get blocked by starting their portfolio because throughout their cohort, they just end up creating so much work and so much stuff. So they're like, okay, I actually have this problem now where there's so much output I've created. I don't know how to pick and choose, and I don't know how to start. So the most important thing for building out your portfolio, in our opinion, that we've seen with cohort students is think of it almost like an MVP, right? So let us work with you and remind you and push you to work with your team to create at least this shared MVP that all of you have, and then all of you can now take that and individually polish it. Don't fall into this gap where you have this fear where you have to make your portfolio perfect. So you stay iterating it and you get stuck again and again. And then you start losing a lot of momentum because you don't really know what you're working towards and what the end goal is going to be, right? Because if you don't get any reward or sense of accomplishment after a while, everyone's going to quit doing it. So we're also working on some new tools to help this. So we have this tool called Fluffable Progress Tracking that's coming soon. We're actually testing this. Some of the alumni are working with us too. So what this is going to be is basically now after the cohort ends, this is going to be a little tool that we can set up for all of our cohort together or for your individual teams where people can keep each other encouraged and make the progress, right? If you're really curious what this is like, you can ask us on Slack. We have a little demo, so we can send you and you can try the demo already. But we're going to wait until the tool is a little bit more polished to share with all of you. But remember, the whole point of this is eventually you want to make your portfolio the best thing ever, right? You will probably end up landing your job before it gets to that state, but that's fine, right? So that's why you want to think about momentum heavy. Every week, set a goal. First 2 weeks, I will say, set this goal where in 2 weeks, how can I upload my project and my cohort work into a portfolio in some shape or the other, right? And then you can spend more time to start polishing. But you want to have something you can send as soon as possible. And that's something we're going to try to support all of you on. The last step is this interview stage. So at this point, this is where you really want to focus on that deck. And then again, there's also other parts of the interview, whether it's behavioral questions, whiteboarding, product critiques. Behavioral questions, I think all of you would naturally do really well. Throughout your 10 weeks, I think there are many examples you can use, right? Whether that's working with a teammate, handling pushback from a founder, navigating disagreement, narrowing ambiguity, right? All these kind of tough questions for early career folks, all of you should know by heart because you've went through it yourself, right? So when you revisit your deck, more or less, your cohort project is going to be way stronger than all your other case studies. So the trick that I want to give all of you is you should take your cohort projects and apply all your other projects into similar frameworks. And if you have trouble doing this, you can book one-on-ones as needed, right? So we have some examples where some of those students actually recently are interviewing with Google. And these are like maybe not early career, but still like mid-level roles. So for more experienced folks, you can catch up with your old coach, even if it's a year in the future, right? They probably still remember the project really well. Or like if you prefer chatting with me or another coach, right? Maybe if you're interviewing with Meta and you're like, well, Johnny worked at Meta, so let me chat with him, right? Or maybe you're interviewing for a content design role and you're like, okay, Jenny's a content designer at Gemini, so let me chat with her, right? You can do all these things, right? But the whole point is you should still have your deck very clearly mapped out. And then by the time you need it, you should be reworking it for that specific interview, right? So there's not going to be a perfect way or a template we can give all of you because every company is going to be different. So when you have that interview, whatever company it is with, you can prepare accordingly. So at this stage, right, like in these examples we put, it's with Google, but for any other company, it's the same thing, right? You will be working on this deck that you already have. And usually for most cohort people, this ends up being the least stressful part because of the deck you already have, right? So it's more about revisiting what all of you already have. Okay. Min, I think I'll pass it to you because we moved Grace's recording at the very end. So I know I presented a lot of content. Anyone who has any questions, definitely let me know in the chat or on Slack. I'm happy to chat more and answer based off of whichever persona you believe you're at.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because it comes up a lot in icebreaker questions and interview questions as well. They're like, "Hey, what's your background? What got you into UX?" But I think this is why I'm such a big advocate and proponent for really flex your background, your transferable skills, your different things that make you unique, because that's going to really help out and build out your design personality, your work ethic, the different kinds of feedback that you can provide to your team. But yeah, I would love to talk about it more if anyone's interested. Political science always is a fascinating subject by itself as well. Yeah, we just found our availabilities work the best there. We also try to work with the availabilities of our client because it's always great to have that live sessions that we can work with them. And we just really try to get our work done in the daytime so that we have more time to talk about it in the evening as well. But as all things, I think whatever your working style and team workflow is, it works the best. Seems like Blueberry works the best at 3 a.m., which is also a great time to be really active. So do what works best for you.
Oh my gosh, I'm dead. This is so funny because I'm literally at an OpenAI hackathon right now. But yeah, we basically built like an online esports, like, you know, a lot of people watch chess online. So we're like, oh, what if we use the OpenAI APIs to build a Gordon Ramsay voiceover? It's really fun to build. We won. So yeah, I talk about that a lot. Yeah, I just hopped in like 20 minutes in, but anyways, huge shout out to Team Blueberry, insane pivot, like Leon had mentioned. But yeah, anyways, the other thing I was gonna say is do your case study as soon as possible. Like you have the biggest edge right now because it's fresh on your mind, and like Leon said, one of the biggest risks for building a portfolio is like you could be the best performer in this cohort, but you could fail to maintain momentum, right? And I don't want to scare you guys, but like this next stage can be really rough if you're not disciplined. I think like I literally went through 31 portfolio reviews and like 3 final rounds to get my job at Dropbox at the time. And it took like a whole year. But like I keep in mind, like I was still employed at IBM. So it's a little bit of a different situation. But anyways, I just want to say I'm here to support for all teams. I know I've given you guys a lot of like written feedback. So I'm happy to do a live like 30-minute review with all teams if you want my feedback on portfolios. And then also I do one-on-one coaching sessions. So I can I can drop a Calendly and you guys can book with me via Slack. So I'll drop it in the cohort 20 everyone chat. Yeah, thanks, Min.
Yo, what's up, Sigmas? Congrats on finishing the cohort. So I'll give you some practical tips on how you can leverage soft skills to help you land a job now that you finished the cohort. So the first part will be personal branding. Second part is going to be about networking. Personal branding essentially like the aura you give to people and how people perceive you, how you show up, because first impressions do matter. So personal branding is really what makes you unique. This could be like what you focus on. For example, if you're a designer who want to focus on the gaming industry or a designer who want to focus on fintech, leveraging that. Also, how you want to present that visually, whether that's like through your portfolio, the visual style of it, your LinkedIn posts, things about that. Voice and tone, how you want to communicate that, like the vibe you give to people too, and also the vibes you give off, like both online and in person. Yeah, so feel free to comment in the chat. How would you describe your brand or your aura that you give? It could be like, for example, if you want to work in the gaming industry, this could be more like casual, playful, artistic. If you want to work in fintech, this could be more formal, serious. Things of that to like designing your own aura to the industry you want to work in as a designer. And so your LinkedIn profile matters a lot. So it's important to have a complete profile because these recruiters and hiring managers, they really don't, well, they have so many job applications like candidates going through every day. They're not going to take the time to go through everything. So it's important to highlight the best parts of you on your LinkedIn, on your profile, because they probably spend like 30 seconds looking through. So they really like first impressions do matter a lot. They do judge a book by its cover. So it's important to optimize that. So in a headline, being descriptive, like highlighting things that make you unique. So also like include relevant keywords. So if you're a designer, put UX designer, and do not put aspiring designer because you don't need permission for anyone to tell you to be a designer. You are a designer yourself. And in about section, this is where you want to summarize your career journey and what drives you. So like talking about like your background, your skills, um, and also including your portfolio on this as well. In your experience section, this is like an extension of your resume. You want to highlight like the impact you've made, like on your co-create project. You could talk about like what metrics you've done and the skills you use, like prototyping, UX research, like tools you use as well, because it's all important for SEO for your profile. And your skills, you can also like in your team, like adding your skills to your LinkedIn skill section and asking each other to endorse each other is great as well. And maybe asking your coach or your founder or your teammates to write a recommendation for you about how great you are in the cohort and highlighting your strong skills to raise you up in that section. Education section definitely include co-create as well, and any like university or certifications you've done. Um, this gives people like credibility, gives you credibility in the crowd, and also like feel free to drop your LinkedIn or like in the Slack, share your LinkedIn profile with each other and like exchange feedback. Um, and link posting on LinkedIn, people say it's cringe, but I don't think it's cringe. Posting on LinkedIn, so LinkedIn is like where a lot of hiring managers and people in position like recruiters hang out. So like more so than like Instagram, Twitter, although you hang out on Twitter too. But LinkedIn is like where the powerful people in decision making power hang out. So the more you post, the more you show up, and the more they'll remember you, and the more they'll most likely hire you. So I've talked to a bunch of like hiring managers, and it's really like a lot of especially startups, they hire people based on like who they know. If you don't know anyone yet, like posting on LinkedIn, standing out there is a great way to become who they know. So I'm like so bullish on posting on LinkedIn, and whoever tells you that posting on LinkedIn is cringe is honestly like not your target audience. So you don't need to listen to them. So LinkedIn's like a microblogging platform. It's like kind of like think of the vibe as between like a Twitter post, like a tweet, and like a full-on blog article. So it's like a medium-sized platform, medium-sized like the writing you see on LinkedIn is like not too long, not too short, but can teach people something or tell a good story. And sometimes like if you don't get a lot of likes on your post, like that's not your fault. Like sometimes like LinkedIn algorithm, the posts like last longer. Like you get likes like 2 days, 2 weeks after you posted it. So think of this as like a long-term game. So some post ideas you can do is talking about like your journey into design, what made you want to do design, what have you learned. This highlights like a lot of times like hiring managers, they like it when a lot of students or a lot of job applicants come from different career paths to design, because they have like crossover skills that they can bring over. So make sure to highlighting that as well, and especially for our career changer buddies. You can also talk about like some experiences you had and lessons you've learned, whether that's like going to a design event, what did you learn, going to a conference, what did you learn for your degree, and like telling a story. So like having like setting the scene, talking about the challenges you faced, the character development, what did you learn. That's important aspects of story to help people like develop like a parasocial relationship, or like a riz, like, or not like riz, but there's like a connection to you as well. Let's talk about what you're working on. Like if you're working on like your portfolio, this could be one of them too. I mean, also like LinkedIn, honestly, like people used to see it as like a job hunting place, but I've seen people talk about like, oh, how their art helped them in their career, or like how they ran a marathon, how that helped them in their career as well. Um, there's some career advice, like what would you tell your like high school or college self, um, and figuring out what you want to do and stuff like that. And also like a lot of people love like I don't know, quote unquote like thought leadership content where you talk about like AI. Oh my god, I said the buzzword AI, and how that influences you as a designer. Because I feel like on LinkedIn, there's so many like people posting about like, oh, AI, how they're scared or like how they love it. That would probably go viral, like your perspective on AI, and or like recent tech, like what do you think about like GPT-5 or like liquid glass, or like tying in memes as well, like talking about that does pretty well too. Um, Also, what inspires you as a designer? Story from like how long, like your childhood and how that relates to you now, like those tend to go viral on LinkedIn that I've seen. um and also like reflecting on like past year, what went well, what didn't go well and stuff. Also like if you have like for example, if you're asking recruiting for a job, you can like talk about what you're working on and like also mention that you're job hunting so people know how to help you. And videos, like LinkedIn is actually artificially pushing these. Like I talked to LinkedIn staff, like they like it when people make videos, and this could be like really simple as like a talking head video. So like writing a script, it's like literally talking from a camera and saying that. Day in my lives are like pretty cool as well. Um, and LinkedIn also has like a newsletter option where you can like deep dive into something. Like longer than usual posts as well. Like the character limit's like 3,000 for actual posts, but if you want to dive into like, you can like even repost your case studies as like a newsletter, or like a long story about your life as a newsletter, or just something, or sharing if you have like a lot of opinions about GPT-5, could be a newsletter or article newsletter, the same thing as well. Um, and usually when I think about like all the posts I want to do, I think about like the 80-20 rule. So like 80% is like value add. Like I'm not like pushing them to do anything. I'm just like sharing advice, sharing value. And 20% rule, 20% is like promoting. Like if you're looking for a job, I'm going to mention that. Like, hi, I'm a designer looking for jobs, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, and also if you guys use other social media platforms, like you can repurpose them. This also like helps a lot. Like you can use like ChatGPT or Claude. Claude is like slightly better than at writing in my experience, but ChatGPT also does a pretty good job. Um, just like writing a post, but being able to repurpose that to other platforms too is good if you want to grow your following in other ways. But if you're like overwhelmed by so many social media, I recommend just focusing on LinkedIn. That's where like if for the purpose of jobs hunting, like most hiring managers hang out. Um, and honestly, like LinkedIn posts, they typically do slightly better if you post them like within working hours. And yeah, let us know in the chat what would you like we want to post on LinkedIn. And for the second part, I know I'm like running a bit over time, so feel free to like reach out to me if you have any other questions too. I'll talk about networking. I actually really hate the word networking. I think we should cancel it. But for the purpose of this presentation, I'll let people know what networking is. It's basically like making connections and finding ways to help each other out. So first impressions do matter a lot in this case. Like for example, you're like going to an in-person networking event. You want to make sure you nail your first impression so people know what you do before they get bored and run away. So you want to have a good elevator pitch. So you usually do this like, so if you're like meeting a recruiter for the first time or like in your job interview, it's good to like use this as like a TLDR of what you do and how other people can help. So you want to like introduce yourself, highlight like what you're interested in, example of things you've worked on, and conclude with like a CTA. So this is like my example, but some other examples is like, hi, I'm a UX designer. I do gaming. I also do this, looking for new opportunities and things like that. Um, you also want to like practice it, so you can like practice within your groups and treat it like just treat it like a conversation starting point. Don't make it longer than a couple sentences because people like might get bored. Um, and networking on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is a great place. Like I actually like, later on I give like exactly templates about what I've used in the past to like cold reach out to people. Um, so on LinkedIn, you can connect with people you know already, or you can also search up people like UX manager, design manager at like a company you want to work at. But the daily limit, like I don't want anyone to get shadow banned on LinkedIn. So try not to send more than 20 a day, because like I read on Google that you could get shadow banned for doing that to do more, because they'll think you as spam. So you can search by different roles, companies, locations, and what people also like the on your profile. You can see what people also viewed on like the recommended people to reach out to from that too. Um, and then also like when you add people on LinkedIn, um, you don't want to necessarily always like target like the head of designs or the VPs, because they might be like, especially like big corporations, they're very removed from like hiring the entry level people. So sometimes like it's good to target people who are like similar level, like other junior designers, other like mid-level designers, because they could probably like give you more relevant advice since they've been in your shoes more recently than someone who might be a design director at, or they could also like refer you since they could relate to you more. But also sometimes like it's like a good balance of like connecting to like directors, because sometimes like at least in my experience, they've been through like similar shoes as I have, and they're willing to like help me along the way too, or introduce me to other people too. Also joining groups, like looking at like, just say you want to get a job at Google or something. There's a design director at Google, and they're part of like different groups. If you go on their LinkedIn profile, you can see like what kind of groups they're in. You can also like join those groups and like post in that groups, and it would likely like your post has a chance to get shown up in their feed. So that's why posting on LinkedIn is very important. Post on LinkedIn today or tomorrow, because it's weekend today. It's also good, like, don't ever send like a plain connection request. I know like LinkedIn changed its thing a little bit, so now we can send a limited personalized connection request. So in this is a good way to like make a first impression, because like usually people get like a ton of connection requests. Like I personally have like thousands of connection requests, but what makes me accept something is like if people like personalize it, so I know like why they're connecting with me. So I try to like message them with a purpose, joining communities, going to events is a great way to meet people too, and just engaging thoughtfully, being authentic, staying connected with them. And really focus on quality over quantity connections. And I'll talk about this is the last part. I know I'm getting a bit over time, but yeah, messaging templates. So these are just like starting points. For example, if you want to reach out to like someone that you admire, I want to learn more about them, you could send them like, I want a quick 15-minute coffee chat. 15 minutes is enough. Usually people are doing this for free, so I think 15 minutes is good, or 30 minutes as well. If you want to be a mentor, you can also do this. And honestly, like with the rise of like ChatGPT, you could honestly like probably like plug in their profile and like make it craft a personalized message for you, but then change it to like make it sound like you, remove the M dashes and emojis and stuff. Yeah, so if you connected with someone, you want to chat more, or like you see someone from like your high school or your college that you want to chat with, because that's like something you have in common. You can also ask for feedback and following up as well. And yeah, so that concludes networking. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about like posting on LinkedIn, personal branding, networking. Hope you enjoy your day and slay. Thank you.